In this video, we're going to talk through adding and subtracting two functions with each other, or combining them, whether it be with addition or subtraction. I'm going to do an example of addition, and I'm going to have you pause the video so you can check your understanding. And then I will do an example of subtraction, do the same process, pause the video and check your understanding. So to begin, if I was given these two functions, f of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 4, and g of x equals 4x minus 2, and it's asking me to find f of x plus g of x, I would first notice they want me to add the two functions together. And the first step I would take in this would be to write out what f of x is in parentheses, and then add whatever g of x is in parentheses as well, just to organize our work. So my first step would be to write what f of x is. In this case, f of x is the quadratic function x squared plus 2x minus 4. So I'm going to put that in parentheses, x squared plus 2x minus 4. And then I'm going to put an addition sign because it's asking me to add, and then I'm going to put g of x in parentheses to the right of it. And g of x in this case is 4x minus 2. So my first step is just more organization than anything. It's going to help me organize the process and organize my thoughts. The second step is what's called combining like terms. So, from review of Algebra 1, a like term has to deal with mainly the power and a variable itself, but you're looking at the power that each variable has. And I'm going to read it left to right, and so if I look at f of x and the first term in f of x is x squared, I notice that it has the power of 2, and then if I look to the function g of x, it doesn't have an x squared or a power of 2 term at all. So I'm going to write x squared plus, I'm just going to show my thought process and show my work, x squared plus nothing because there is no x squared term over here, and that's just going to equal x squared. Another way you hear people say that would be x squared doesn't have a like term, so you can just drop it down to your answer. So we're done with the x squared terms. Moving on to the next term in order would be 2x. And I'm going to add. Now in this case, 2x does have a like term from g of x. It's this 4x. So now we do have to do a little bit of math. 2x plus 4x, you add the coefficients. 2 plus 4 is 6x. So we're done with those two terms. We can cross these out as we go to help us organize our thoughts as well. And then finally, we're dealing with this negative 4 in the f of x. Negative 4 does indeed have a like term. I'm going to add because it's asking me to add. Now in this case, a mistake that is made at times is that you don't bring the negative sign in front of that 2 along for the ride. You do have to do that because we're adding the negative 2 to the negative 4. So negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. In this case, we have interacted with all the terms, and so we are done combining like terms, and we're done adding these two functions. The final step then is just to write it in standard form, step 3. And standard form goes from decreasing order of power. So the highest power to the lowest power. In this case, the highest power is the power of 2. So I'm going to write x squared. And the next power, even though it's not written, you can assume that power is 1. So I'm going to put plus 6x because it's a positive 6x. And then finally minus 6, my last term that we combine. And this is my final answer for addition. Now, go ahead and pause the video and try adding your two functions over here. Alright, at this point you should have paused the video and tried to add these two functions together on your own. I have listed out my steps and shown my work. I didn't list step 3. Here it is. So, please check your work with mine. I listed out the two functions. Step 1, step 2, I started to combine like terms. In step 3, I arrived at my final answer of 2x squared minus 6x minus 2. Alright, moving on to subtraction. Subtraction is very similar. The only difference is because we're subtracting, you have to pay attention to the signs, especially if you're subtracting a negative and what would happen there. We're going to work with, in this part, I'm going to work with the same two functions up here, f of x and g of x from my I do problem. And so the same first step is going to exist. I'm just going to rewrite those out. And instead of putting addition in between, I'm going to put subtraction. All right, f of x is x squared plus 2x minus 4. And then I'm going to put minus g of x, which was 4x minus 2. All right, first step is done. Second step then is to start combining like terms. And in this case, the process of combination is going to be subtraction. Now, similar thing is happening though this x squared from f of x doesn't have a like term, so I'm just going to put x squared minus nothing equals x squared. Done with that one. We can cross it out if we want. Moving on to 2x. 2x does have that like term of 4x, but in this case it's going to be minus 4x. And 4x is positive, so we just write positive 4x. So 2x minus 4x equals negative 2x. And then finally, negative 4x minus negative 2. So down with the linear term, so I'm going to write negative 4, sorry, not negative 4x. Negative 4, and then I'm going to put minus because there's a minus sign. Now again, that negative has to go with that 2, so it looks like that. Negative 4 minus negative 2. And this is where you have to be careful of what actually happens, especially when you minus a negative. If you remember, when you do this situation, it becomes plus. So now it becomes negative 4 plus 2, which is negative 2. And then finally, my final step is just to write it in standard form, which is x squared minus 2x minus 2. So again, you can look at the two answers we've arrived at. Addition was up here, subtraction is down here. Same two functions, but you do arrive at a different answer depending if you add or subtract the functions together. And again, with subtraction, you just have to be careful with your signs in adding positives and negatives together, or subtracting positives and negatives together. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try subtracting your two functions from each other, and then check your work with mine. All right, at this point, you should have paused the video and tried subtracting your two functions from each other. I've listed out my steps. Step 1, I wrote out both functions. Step 2, I started to combine like terms, in this case via subtraction. A couple things to notice. The negative 3x here and the negative 3x here. It becomes negative 3x minus a negative 3x, and in that case it becomes addition. You're minusing a negative, so then you get negative 3x plus positive 3x. They cancel each other out, so it becomes 0x. And then finally, the same thing down here. It's negative 7 minus a positive 5, which equates to negative 12. And then in your final answer, if you notice, if a term has a coefficient of 0, you don't need to write it in your final answer. So you should get 2x squared minus 12. All right, that concludes the video of adding and subtracting functions with each other. Thank you for watching.